Welcome to our deep dive. We're taking a look at Aldous Huxley's The Perennial Philosophy.
Oh, a fascinating choice.
It really is. Now, this isn't your typical, dense philosophical treatise.
Right.
Huxley curates wisdom from all these mystics and spiritual giants across, various traditions.
Yeah, and he focuses on those who have directly experienced the divine.
Exactly. Those who've, actually had a glimpse of that deeper reality.
The that, as he calls it.
Yes, the that. And right from the beginning, Huxley makes it clear that that perceiving this ultimate reality, this that, it's not exactly a walk in the park.
Not for the average person, that's for sure.
It's not like something you just, stumble upon accidentally.
It's more like, well, he uses the analogy of trying to study astronomy.
Oh, I remember that.
With just the naked eye, you need the right tools.
And in this case, the tools aren't telescopes or complex equations.
No, they're internal qualities. Love, purity of heart, humility, that sort of thing.
So it's less about accumulating knowledge and more about cultivating.
A certain way of being.
Yeah. These qualities become like a lens,
The lens through which we view reality.
And a lens that's, clouded by ego or negativity just won't allow the true nature of things to shine through.
It's like that analogy that Huxley uses from the Chandogya Upanishad.
Oh, yeah.
About the essence of a tree, like the subtle essence of a tree being hidden within salt, dissolved in water.
It's there.
Yeah.
But it takes a refined perception to even recognize it, right?
Exactly. And Huxley, he actually suggests 3 paths to help refine this perception.
Okay, so what are they?
Inward exploration, observing the true selves of others, and contemplating the divine in nature.
That's really interesting. And this is where that central concept of that art thou comes into play.
Absolutely. It's the idea that, our true self is fundamentally one with this divine ground.
The concept that, you see it echoed across various spiritual traditions.
Oh, absolutely. From the Chandogya Upanishad's, bold declaration, thou art that.
Right. To Chuangzu's emphasis on emptiness and oneness.
It's a recurring theme, this idea of realizing our true nature as identical with the divine.
It is. And what's interesting is that Huxley doesn't shy away from including Christian mystics in this conversation either.
He quotes Eckhart, right?
Yep.
Who states the knower and the known are one.
Right. And he also, highlights the cloud of unknowing, which talks about dying to self.
As a path to this realization.
Mm-hmm. It's important to note, though, that art thou,
okay,
it doesn't mean that we just dissolve into some vague universal blob
right
individuality. It remains.
Okay.
But it's understood in a new light.
So it's like each wave is distinct, but still fundamentally a part of the ocean.
Precisely. Now, when we get to describing the nature of this divine ground, this is where things start to get a bit more challenging.
Well, I'd imagine so, because it's ultimately beyond our ability to grasp it fully with language.
Exactly. Huxley uses all sorts of sources to try to paint a picture.
But it's about pointing towards something that defies easy definition.
It's kind of like trying to describe a color that's never been seen before.
You got it. So he leans on concepts like Brahman from Hinduism.
Right.
It's described as the essence and principle of all existence, independent of causation.
Independent of causation. And he pulls some really striking quotes to illustrate this point.
He does, like Shankara.
Yes.
Shankara saying that Brahman is the one before whom words recoil.
Powerful imagery.
Yes.
And Lao Tzu's line, it was from the nameless that heaven and earth sprang.
Beautiful, isn't it? And even Eckhart, in his very fiery way,
yes,
describes experiencing God's presence.
In a way that just transcends any conceptual understanding.
Totally. One thing that really stands out to me is how the perennial philosophy emphasizes both the immanence and the transcendence of the divine. The ground is both within us
and beyond us
at the same time.
That's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is. And Huxley warns us about getting stuck on one side of that equation,
Yeah.
Clinging to a purely immanent view or purely transcendent view, it kind of limits our understanding.
So it's about holding that paradox.
Like embracing the mystery.
Yeah. But if this divine ground is everywhere, in everything, how does it actually manifest in the world? How do we experience it?
That's where things start to get really practical.
Okay.
Huxley explores how the divine can be experienced through nature, through art, through sacraments and different traditions.
Yeah.
He quotes Rusbrook, who says, "We are all one, intimately united in our eternal image, which is the image of God and the source in us of all our life."
that idea of interconnectedness is so powerful.
It is.
That everything is a reflection of the divine. But I do remember Huxley offering a word of caution about getting too caught up in the beauty of enjoying the world.
Oh, yes. It's not about rejecting beauty or joy, you know, but recognizing that true fulfillment doesn't come from clinging to things that are, well, in her
That
view,
are always changing.
always change.
It's about appreciating it, but not clinging. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like non-attachment is a pretty major theme in this whole perennial philosophy thing.
It really is. And it's closely tied to another key concept, charity.
Okay.
And Huxley uses that term in a much broader sense than just like giving to the poor.
Right. Yeah.
He's talking about love as this driving force, this energy in the spiritual life.
So it's more than just like warm, fuzzy feelings.
Right. It's a way of being, a way of relating to the world.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the divine in all things, you know, even in those we might find difficult to love.
Okay, so how do we do that? Like, how do we cultivate that kind of love?
Well, Huxley actually quotes William Law, who says, we can only love what we know, and we can never know completely what we do not love.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's about using love as a path to knowledge, to deeper understanding.
That's interesting. So it's not just about feeling love, but letting love guide us towards greater knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And to illustrate this point further, Huxley brings in St. John of the Cross, who emphasizes that true charity, it goes beyond just personal gratification. It's not about, you know, seeking just our own happiness. You know, it's about a selfless love, one that truly seeks the good of others.
So it's love as this outward flowing force.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what leads to true peace.
It is that deeper peace that Huxley describes, not just the absence of conflict, but that peace that passes understanding, that's rooted in something much deeper.
It's that peace that you can have even amidst chaos.
Exactly. And Huxley, he actually distinguishes between like the everyday peace we try to strive for in our relationships, and then this other kind of peace
that arises from union with the divine. And charity. In this broader sense, it helps us bridge that gap.
It helps us move from that kind of limited, ego-centered perspective to something more expansive.
To a selfless way of being.
Yeah. Now, Huxley also talks about mortification, which, to modern ears might sound a little intense.
Yeah, it definitely has, some negative connotations, for sure.
Right.
But he's not talking about self-punishment or anything like that. Mortification, in the context of the perennial philosophy, it's more about consciously letting go of those aspects of ourselves, those parts of us that keep us trapped in ego,
So it's about putting to death those desires, those habits that prevent us from
realizing our true self.
Okay, so like a mental and emotional decluttering, getting rid of the psychic junk,
Yeah, exactly. And this leads to what Huxley calls non-attachment, which is
it's not about rejecting the world, but learning to relate to it without clinging.
It reminds me of that story he tells from Chuang Tzu about the cook cutting up the bullock.
Oh yeah.
He moves with this effortless skill. It becomes like an art form.
And it's about finding that harmony with the world, not struggling against it.
Yeah, and doing it through disciplined action, not through force.
Right, like that advice we get from St. Francois de Sales: push far enough towards the void, hold fast enough to quietness. To know the always so is to be illumined.
It's a lot to unpack in that one little statement.
It is. It's an invitation to find that stillness within, where true understanding can emerge.
That stillness, that quietness.
Yeah.
Where things can become clear.
Exactly.
And speaking of understanding, Huxley, he dedicates a pretty significant portion of the book to exploring this concept of truth.
Oh, he does. And for good reason.
Well, yeah, because truth, it can mean so many different things.
Yeah, right. It can. I mean, there's factual truth, the kind we, deal with in science and just in everyday life. And then there's this deeper, ultimate truth that Huxley's really pointing toward.
The truth with a capital T.
Exactly. And he makes these distinctions between factual truth, symbolic truth, and then ultimate truth.
And he makes it clear that this ultimate truth, the truth of that art thou,
yeah,
it can't really be fully grasped by by the intellect alone.
No, it can't. It's something that has to be experienced.
It reminds me of that Eckhart statement. Why dost thou prate of God? Whatever thou sayest of him is untrue.
Oh, that's a good one. It's such it's a provocative way of highlighting the limitations of language. Yeah. When we try to talk about that which is ultimately beyond description.
Because words can only take us so far.
So far. But it's interesting, too. Huxley also critiques Hume in this section.
Oh, really?
He does, yeah. He points out a flaw in Hume's reasoning that actually stemmed from Hume's use of language. Okay. So Huxley argues that Hume's assumption that events are loose and separate.
Right.
It's a result of the way language kind of divides and categorizes reality.
So the language itself was kind of creating the illusion of separation?
In a way, yes. But in actuality, everything's interconnected. Part of that web of existence that the perennial philosophy is pointing to.
So he's warning us against letting the limitations of language dictate our understanding of reality.
He is. Yes, he really emphasizes the importance of direct experience. Okay. Knowing by being rather than just knowing about something.
Yeah.
And this connects to another fascinating aspect of the perennial philosophy, the role of temperament.
Oh, okay. So how does our personality influence our approach to spirituality?
A lot, actually. Huxley draws on the work of W.H. Sheldon, who identified these three basic temperaments: viscerotonic, somatotonic, and cerebrotonic.
Okay. And each of those has its own strengths, weaknesses when it comes to navigating the spiritual path.
Absolutely. So the viscerotonic type, for example, they tend to be more emotional.
Okay.
More drawn to connection, to community. They might really thrive in devotional practices and religious traditions that emphasize love and belonging.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. What about the somatotonic type?
The somatotonic type, they're more action-oriented, more assertive. They might be drawn to religions that emphasize discipline, strength, maybe even a bit of hierarchy.
So like paths that involve a lot of ritual or structured practice?
Yes.
Then there's the cerebrotonic type.
The cerebrotonic type, those are the thinkers, the contemplatives. Oh. They love to delve into complex ideas, to analyze things, to explore different perspectives.
So they might gravitate more towards solitary practices like meditation or philosophical inquiry.
Exactly. But Huxley cautions, though, that each temperament, even the ones that seem really well suited to the spiritual life, they have their potential pitfalls too.
Oh, I see.
So it's not about trying to fit ourselves into some specific mold, Yeah. It's more about recognizing our own tendencies and then working with them skillfully.
So self-knowledge is key.
It is.
We need to understand our own strengths and weaknesses to really make progress.
Absolutely. And to highlight this point, he actually brings in quotes from folks like St. Catherine of Siena, who says, "Thou, the human being, art that which is not. I am that I am."
Oh.
It's a reminder that our true self, it's not just this limited individual ego,
Right.
It's something much, much vaster.
Yeah.
And Lao Tzu, he captures this beautifully when he says, "The valley spirit never dies. It is called the mysterious female. It is there within us all the time. Draw upon it as you will. It never runs dry."
That's powerful imagery. It's like that divine spark. It's always present within us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so often obscured by layers of conditioning, ego, and distractions.
Exactly. And that's where this whole concept of grace comes in. It's that mysterious force that can help us
to remove those obscurations.
Remove the obscurations, connect with our true nature.
Okay. And grace can manifest in so many different forms,
right? Right, it can. A sudden insight. Support from a teacher, even challenges.
Okay.
Challenges that kind of force us to grow, to evolve.
Yeah. Huxley also talks a lot about prayer.
Yeah.
But not in that sense of begging for favors or trying to bend the universe to our will.
No. He cautions against that kind of selfish prayer.
Yeah.
He actually quotes St. Augustine, who says, "Ask of me better things than these, greater things than these. Ask of me spiritual things. Ask of me myself."
Wow. So it's about aligning our will
with the divine will,
with a greater wisdom about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of trust, of openness, allowing grace to flow into our lives. And he shares some really practical advice from mystics, you know, like Yunkia Taski, who cautions us, so long as you seek Buddhahood, specifically exercising yourself for it, there is no attainment for you.
So it's about letting go of that striving.
Letting go of the striving, surrendering to the process. Yeah. Yeah, it's a paradox, but then again, paradoxes seem to be at the heart of the spiritual life.
They really do.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings us to Huxley's perspective on suffering.
Yeah, which is a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as something to be just avoided or endured,
Right.
But as a potential catalyst for growth, for understanding.
He explains that suffering often arises from our sense of separation from that divine ground.
Right.
From that imperfection, disunity, and separation from an embracing totality, as he puts it.
Yeah. It's a reminder of our interconnectedness and the consequences of clinging to that illusion of separateness.
Exactly. And he also explores this idea of vicarious suffering.
Yeah, the suffering that saints and mystics take on for the sake of others.
He clarifies, though, that it's not their personal suffering that's redemptive, but rather it's the divine ground working through them. They become these vessels for love, for compassion that extends beyond themselves.
So their willingness to suffer becomes like this conduit for
grace, for healing,
for something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And this ties into Huxley's discussion of time and eternity.
It does. He gets into Boethius's ideas of providence and fate and the possibility of both human and divine foreknowledge.
It gets a little heady there.
It does. But ultimately he emphasizes the liberating potential of living in the present moment, of accessing that eternal now that's always available to us when we let go of our preoccupation with the past and the future.
It's only in the present moment that we can truly experience eternity.
You got it. And this leads us to Huxley's his exploration of the various paths to liberation described in the Perennial philosophy.
Right.
He uses that story of Indra from the Maitrayana Upanishad to illustrate these different levels of liberation.
And if I remember correctly, Indra goes through like all these stages of understanding, and each time he thinks he's found the ultimate truth, and then he realizes, oh wait, there's more.
There's more. There's always more to discover.
It's a journey, not a destination.
It is. But Huxley does emphasize that the highest level of liberation involves union with that divine ground, that realization of oneness of self, as Shankara describes it.
That transcending the illusion of separation, recognizing that our true self is not just this limited ego.
Exactly.
It's something much, much bigger.
Much bigger. And this brings us to one of Huxley's one of his most important warnings. The dangers of idolatry.
Okay. And he's not just talking about, worshiping statues.
No. He's talking about more modern forms of idolatry, like our obsession with technology, blind devotion to political ideologies.
Right. So it's more subtle.
It's much more subtle. He identifies these three main types of idolatry that are prevalent, today.
And what are those?
Technological, political, and moral.
Okay. So technological idolatry, that's all around us.
Oh, it is. I mean, we're constantly bombarded with these messages that tell us, happiness is just one more gadget away.
Right. Happiness is right around the corner if you just buy this new thing.
Right. And it's the worship of progress, of material possessions, this belief that our salvation lies in external things rather than internal transformation.
Yeah. It's looking for happiness in all the wrong places.
It is.
And then there's political idolatry.
Oh, yeah.
Which we see in that blind allegiance to political parties, political leaders.
It's the worship of power.
Yeah.
The belief that someone else can provide the solutions to all of our problems.
Okay.
It's giving our power away to something outside of ourselves.
And then there's moral idolatry, which is a little harder to pinpoint.
Yeah, it's a bit more subtle. It's about clinging to our own righteousness,
Okay.
elevating our ethical ideals above all else,
Right.
forgetting that even our most cherished value, they're tools. They're tools on the path. They're not the ultimate goal.
So it's about holding everything lightly, even our own sense of right and wrong, to open ourselves up to
have a greater
truth. Yeah.
And that requires a certain level of emotional balance, right?
It does. And Huxley, he dedicates a whole section of the book to discussing the role of emotions in the spiritual life.
And how do they play into it?
Well, he warns us against getting too caught up in emotional states, whether they're positive or negative.
So don't chase the highs, don't run from the lows.
Right. He quotes Fenelon, who cautions, the imperfect destroy true devotion because they seek sensible sweetness in prayer.
It's not about chasing those blissful states or avoiding the difficult ones. It's about finding that steady equanimity that allows us to ride the waves.
Ride the waves
of the spiritual path.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner stability that allows us to stay grounded even when, even when things around us might be a bit chaotic.
And this is where the importance of spiritual practices comes in. Oh, absolutely.
To help cultivate that inner stillness.
The tools and techniques.
They can help us get there.
The tools and techniques, yeah. Huxley, he explores a pretty wide range of spiritual exercises.
Oh, like what?
Well, from, something as simple as repeating a sacred word or phrase to more complex practices like meditation, contemplation, that sort of thing.
So there's a whole spectrum.
There is. And he draws from all sorts of traditions, emphasizing that these practices, they're tools for self-knowledge and transformation, not ends in themselves.
It's not about the practice itself. It's about
what the practice helps us to cultivate.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking of that practice of repeating the divine name, which he talks about as being this powerful way to kind of cultivate a sense of the sacred.
Right. And he also points to the practice of focusing on a single word or phrase, like as described in The Cloud of Unknowing. And the idea is to use that word as this shield.
Against distractions.
Against distractions, a way to deepen our focus.
Yeah.
And open ourselves up to that divine presence.
But he also cautions against getting too attached to specific techniques.
Oh, he does.
The outcomes.
Yeah, the goal isn't to achieve some sort of like ecstatic experience,
Right.
It's more about purifying the heart.
Okay.
And cultivating that steady awareness
of the divine
in everyday life.
It's interesting how Huxley connects this inner transformation to a sense of social responsibility.
He does. He doesn't see contemplation as just this purely individual pursuit.
Oh, I see.
He argues that those who've cultivated that deep connection with the divine, those who've had that glimpse of that art thou reality.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are actually best equipped
to
bring about positive change
in the world.
Because
they're operating from a place of love.
Love, compassion,
understanding, less likely to be driven by
ego, by greed.
Yeah.
By the desire for power.
It's like that quote, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yes. And Huxley kind of takes it a step further. He suggests that the truly examined life, the life that's grounded in contemplation and self-knowledge, it has this social utility.
It naturally flows outwards.
It does.
And impacts the world around it.
It does.
So it's not about escaping from the world.
No.
It's about bringing those transformative insights
into the world.
Back into the world.
Letting them shape our actions, our interactions.
And that seems like a perfect segue into Huxley's his exploration of ritual, symbols, sacraments in the spiritual life.
Yeah, he acknowledges the importance of these outer forms, but he really emphasizes the primacy of inner experience.
So it's about using them skillfully. Not getting too hung up on.
Not becoming enslaved by them.
Yeah.
Right. He talks about sacramentalizing everyday life, seeing everything as a potential manifestation of the divine.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Drawing inspiration from the Bhagavad Gita. It's about finding that sacredness in the ordinary.
Yeah.
The eternal in the temporal.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive into Aldous Huxley's the Perennial philosophy.
We have. It's a book that really challenges us, you know.
It does.
To look beyond the surface, to delve into the depths of our own being, and to recognize that interconnectedness that unites us all.
That fundamental unity that's at the heart of it all.
It is. It's a journey of self-discovery, but it's also a journey of recognizing that divine spark.
That's within each of us.
Within each of us.
And within all of creation.
And within all of creation. And perhaps that's the most powerful takeaway from all of this, you know? The wisdom of the ages, the insights of these mystics, these saints. They're not just abstract concepts. They're living truths that have the power to transform our lives and ultimately the world around us.
Absolutely. This has been a fascinating exploration, and I encourage our listeners to pick up a copy of The Perennial Philosophy and embark on their own deep dive.
It's a journey worth taking.